In ancient Egypt, life was a gift from the gods. This was a civilization that rose from the banks of a great river, the Nile. Every year, this river would flood, leaving behind rich, dark soil. This soil allowed the Egyptians to grow food and build a society that lasted for thousands of years. But they believed this life was only the beginning. It was a preparation for something much greater. Religion was not just a part of their life, it was their life. It explained everything, from the rising of the sun each morning to the flooding of the river each year. These were not random events. They were the actions of powerful gods and goddesses who watched over the world of mortals. The Egyptians saw the divine in everything around them. The sun god Ra sailed his boat across the sky each day, bringing light and warmth to the world. The goddess of the sky, Nut, arched over the earth, protecting it, and the god of the earth, Geb, lay beneath her. This connection to the natural world made their faith deeply personal. They built magnificent temples not just for grand ceremonies, but as homes for the gods on earth. Priests would perform daily rituals, offering food and prayers to ensure the gods remained happy. If the gods were pleased, the Nile would flood, the crops would grow, and Egypt would prosper. It was a sacred contract between humanity and the divine. At the very heart of their beliefs about the afterlife was the story of Osiris. He was a great king who was murdered by his jealous brother Set. Osiris's wife, the powerful goddess Isis, searched for his body and brought him back to life with her magic. Because he had conquered death, Osiris became the king of the underworld, the place where all souls hope to go. He represented the promise of resurrection and eternal life. This story gave every Egyptian hope. It told them that even though their bodies would die, their spirit could live on, just like Osiris. They believed that death was not an end, but a doorway to another existence. This belief in an afterlife shaped every aspect of an Egyptian's time on earth. Their goal was to live a good and honest life, one that would be worthy of joining Osiris in his kingdom. They followed a code of conduct called Ma'at, which represented truth, order, and justice. Living according to Ma'at was essential, as they believed their actions were being recorded. When they died, they would be judged on how well they had lived. This wasn't just about avoiding punishment, it was about earning a place in a beautiful, perfect version of the Egypt they knew and loved, where they could live forever in peace and happiness. To begin the journey to the afterlife, the body had to be preserved. The Egyptians believed the soul needed a physical home to return to, even after death. This is why they developed the complex process of mummification. It was a long and careful procedure, taking about 70 days to complete. First, the internal organs like the liver, lungs, and intestines were removed. The brain was taken out through the nose, only the heart was left inside the body. They believed the heart was the center of a person's intelligence and memory, and it would be needed for the final judgment. The body was then dried out using a special salt called natron. Once the body was completely dry, it was time for the wrapping. The embalmers would carefully wrap the body in hundreds of meters of linen bandages. Between the layers of linen, they would place small magical charms called amulets. These amulets were meant to protect the deceased on their dangerous journey through the underworld. The most important amulet was the scarab beetle, which was placed over the heart. It was inscribed with a special spell to prevent the heart from speaking out against the deceased during the final judgment. This entire process was a sacred ritual, designed to ensure the body would last for eternity, providing a safe anchor for the soul. The tomb was more than just a burial place. It was an eternal home. For pharaohs, these homes were magnificent pyramids or vast hidden tombs cut deep into the rock of the Valley of the Kings. But even ordinary Egyptians prepared a tomb to the best of their ability. These tombs were meant to contain everything the person would need in the next life. They were filled with furniture, clothing, tools, and food. It was believed that whatever was placed in the tomb would magically be available to the deceased in the afterlife. The walls were often covered in beautiful paintings and hieroglyphs. These tomb decorations were not just for show. They were a vital part of preparing for the afterlife. The paintings depicted scenes from the person's life on Earth, as well as images of them enjoying the afterlife. There were pictures of farming, feasting, and spending time with family. It was believed that these images would become real in the next world. The hieroglyphs contained spells and prayers from a special book called the Book of the Dead. These spells were like a guidebook, providing the knowledge and magic needed to navigate the challenges of the underworld and safely reach the kingdom of Osiris. The Egyptians believed that a person was made of several spiritual parts. Two of the most important were the Ba and the Ka. The Ka was a person's life force or spiritual twin. It was born with them and stayed in the tomb after death, needing the offerings of food and drink to survive. The Ba was more like our idea of a personality. It was shown as a bird with a human head, and it could travel between the world of the living and the tomb. For a person to achieve eternal life, the Ba and the Ka had to be reunited each night in the tomb. This reunion transformed the deceased into a powerful spirit called an Akh, who could live among the gods. The journey after death was a perilous one. The soul had to travel through the Duat, which was the Egyptian underworld. This was a dark and dangerous place, filled with terrifying monsters, lakes of fire, and gates guarded by fierce demons. To pass through safely, the deceased needed the spells and passwords from the Book of the Dead. These sacred texts, written on papyrus scrolls and placed in the coffin, acted as a map and a source of magical protection. The soul would have to answer riddles and know the secret names of the gatekeepers to be allowed to pass through each stage of the journey. It was a test of both knowledge and spiritual purity. The final and most important trial was the weighing of the heart ceremony. This took place in the Hall of Two Truths in the presence of Osiris and 42 other divine judges. The god Anubis, with the head of a jackal, would lead the soul to a great golden scale. On one side of the scale, he would place the heart of the deceased. On the other side, he would place the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. The person then had to declare their innocence, stating all the bad things they had not done in their life, such as lying, stealing, or murdering. This was known as the negative confession. As the deceased spoke, the god Thoth, with the head of an ibis, would record the result. If the heart was lighter than the feather, it meant the person had lived a good and honest life. They were declared true of voice and welcomed by Osiris into the afterlife. But if the heart was heavy with sin, it would be heavier than the feather. The scale would tip, and the heart would be thrown to a terrifying monster named Ammit. She was a combination of a crocodile, a lion, and a hippopotamus. Ammit would devour the heart, and the soul would cease to exist forever. This was the ultimate fear for an ancient Egyptian, not just death but complete annihilation. For the ancient Egyptians, these beliefs were the foundation of their entire world. The promise of an eternal life gave meaning to their time on earth. It encouraged them to live well, to uphold justice, and to honor the gods. It was the driving force behind some of their greatest achievements. The magnificent pyramids, the beautifully decorated tombs, and the incredible practice of mummification were all born from this deep desire to defeat death and live forever. This focus on eternity gave them a sense of purpose and stability that allowed their civilization to flourish for over 3,000 years. It was a faith that celebrated life, both here on earth and in the world to come. The journey to the afterlife was a central part of their culture, a story told through their art, their writing, and their architecture. It connected the pharaoh in his golden palace to the farmer working in the fields. Everyone, rich or poor, hoped for the same thing, to pass the final judgment and be reborn into the field of reeds. This was a perfect heavenly version of Egypt where the sun always shone, the crops were always plentiful, and there was no sickness or sadness. Here, they could be reunited with their loved ones and enjoy all the simple pleasures of life for all time. This powerful vision gave them comfort in the face of death and a profound hope for the future. Today, thousands of years later, we are still fascinated by ancient Egypt. The stories of their gods and their journey to the afterlife continue to capture our imagination. We visit museums to gaze upon the faces of mummies and marvel at the treasures they buried in their tombs. We study the hieroglyphs on temple walls, trying to understand what they believed and how they lived. There is something universal in their quest to understand life and death. They ask the same questions we ask today. What happens to us when we die? Is there something more? Their answers were complex, beautiful, and deeply human. The legacy of ancient Egypt is more than just pyramids and golden masks. It is a testament to the power of human belief. It shows us how a society can be shaped by its hopes for what lies beyond. The Egyptians looked at the stars, the river, and the cycle of the seasons, and they saw a promise of eternity. They dedicated their lives to preparing for that journey, leaving behind a story written in stone and sand. And by studying their beliefs, we learn not only about their world, but also about our own enduring search for meaning in the great mystery of life and death. Their journey ended long ago, but their story lives on.